Welcome back to Life in Stages. And if this is your first time visiting us, well, welcome. Our bi-weekly series of conversations with some of the country's, well, many of the country's leading actors, directors, writers. And today in the studio, we are joined by Jeff Miller. And Jeff and I have known each other for a very long time. We've worked together many times. We have met outside of rehearsal. So here we go. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Joel. It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. Let's begin when, growing up, was anything related to what you have become, was that part of your growing up? Was that part of your family life?
No. No. There's no performers in my family. There was no. My father was very, very interested in music and old music. So music filled our house all the time when I was growing up, all the time. And he was a collector and he was a historian. So he was passionate about music, but he wasn't a musician. So there were no performers. I was shy. I didn't speak much. I didn't talk much when I was younger. My parents would try to draw me out in different ways, but I would often, in family situations, would be sitting in the corner. When I discovered books, I read all the time. I had no desire to be in front of people, no desire to be the center of attention, until I did want to be the center of attention. What happened?
Yeah, do you remember when that was?
Yes.
Okay.
I started to watch. I watched a lot of television, and I watched a show called The Carol Burnett Show, which was very popular back in the 70s. And I was intrigued by why people would do that. Like, why would you stand in front of all those people and be silly and have them stare at you? So I didn't think I wanted to be Carol Burnett or Harvey Korman or Tim Conway, but I wanted to be one of the Ernie Flatt dancers because they didn't have to talk, but they were beautiful and athletic and choreographed. And I thought that was really special. So from about the age of 8 or 9, I wanted to be an Ernie Flatt dancer, but I didn't tell anybody. Officially, I wanted to be an airline pilot. However, to make a long story short,
No, you don't.
No, actually, I guess the point is make a short story long. Right. Okay. So when I hit high school, very shy, braces, glasses, not very popular, loved my books. But for some reason, because of the Ernie Flatt dancers, I thought I would take the drama class in grade 11. So I was 16. Oh my gosh. And within the first 2 weeks, we had to do a project where we had to do a commercial for a product. We had to come up with a product, and we had to do a commercial for it. I was terrified, absolutely terrified. I was going to drop the course within the 2 weeks of taking it.
Yeah.
I didn't know what I was going to do. But anyways, a couple nights before, I came up with this idea, and it was basically a clicker where you can skip through the commercials on TV, which at the time was revolutionary because we're talking 1947, right? So I put up together this, and all of a sudden I decided I was going to do it as this Southern, like, cowboy. Like, you have got to learn to, you don't want to watch commercials. And I don't know where I came up with the Southern accent. And I put together this presentation where I had this clicker and had this cool name for it. Anyway, I did it in class. Mm-hmm. Everybody else had done sort of like, this is my, my brooch, or this is my pin, or this, like, it's something really dull. And I came out with this burst of energy. Mm-hmm. How you doing, folks? I'm going to tell you who's tired of watching all those damn commercials on TV, right? Anyway, I finished it. I thought I was possessed. I didn't know what happened to me. Like, I was like, where did this come from? I haven't said 6 words in 3 years of high school. And all of a sudden, I'm this raging, Alabama salesman. Anyways, we finished. And the teacher, Mary Self, paused and said, I have never, in my 5 years of teaching this course, given anyone a perfect mark. but Jeff Miller, I'm giving you a perfect mark for that presentation.
How nice.
In his way. And I remember going, what? I have no idea what I'm doing. Plus, I never want to do that again. like that's bizarre.
Yeah.
So I was like, is it possible that I'm good at something? Like, is it possible that I have something to share? And so anyways, from then on, I was very popular in drama class. And of course, my confidence level. That spring, there was going to be a show. And I had never been part of the drama club. I decided I'd join the drama club. So Valerie Cook was the teacher. We were going to do a collective creation all about being a teenager. We were going to write our own monologues and scenes. So I've never done a show. I've never been in a play. We did the first rehearsal at 3:30 one Thursday afternoon. And there's like 15 kids. We're all part of the drama club. And we do this rehearsal, which is basically some theater games. We do a little bit of improvisation. I'm terrified, but I do it. The end of rehearsal, Valerie Cook says, thank you everybody for a good first rehearsal. We'll do another one on Monday. And I just want you to notice what Jeff Miller did today, because that's how you conduct yourself in a rehearsal. I went, what the heck is going on here? Like, again, I had been thrown off the soccer team. I had been laughed at. Like, every time I tried to catch a football, people were like, just go, leave. Gym class, they tried to get me to do football. And finally, the gym teacher took me aside and said, why don't you just run around the track? So that's what I did for the whole term. I ran around the track. I thought I was never going to be good at anything. So these two teachers, you have been a teacher, Joel. Mm-hmm. I'm currently a teacher. Yeah. I understand the impact that the words can have of a teacher, because these two people who they weren't in it for, I wasn't paying them off, or I wasn't going to be, washing their car or something, but they felt inclined to say to the person who didn't have any status within the school, who didn't have sort of, oh, he's the actor, everyone knows he's the actor, said, you just did something instinctually, and I'm going to tell you that you have something. Yeah. That was revelatory. Yeah. And from that moment on, I thought maybe I have some natural instinct for this. Yeah. Turns out I don't, but I.
Yeah, I know, Jeff. But so that's high school.
Yeah.
And what happens next? Because you will become a professional.
Yeah,
actor.
You know what, Joel? It's interesting because I happen to be very lucky to have parents who were supportive immediately. Mm-hmm. I know a lot of young people, they go back or they keep that hidden. Oh, I might want to do that. Oh no, there's no way. You'll never make a living. Yeah. You'll always be poor, so on and so forth. My parents were like, fantastic. My mother was a reader, voracious reader. My father loved music. Mm-hmm. So they haven't had an appreciation for the arts, even though they weren't performers themselves. So they were supportive from the moment. And then I just went, well, then I'm going to be finished grade 13. I'd like to maybe go to a theater school. So, my first choice was Ryerson at the time, which was called Ryerson. It was called Ryerson. It's now TMU. And I applied to York University. So I did my audition at Ryerson. And these are group auditions. And at the end of it, Neil Daynard, who was one of the evaluators, said, could you come back next year when you don't have braces? This is like 1947, right? So people were allowed to say stuff to teenagers like, basically he was saying, could you come back when you're a little better looking?
That's great.
And blessed, perhaps we edit his name out. I don't know if he's still alive. Anyway, I did. I got my braces off. I went back the next year and they took me. So,
well, it's amazing how removing braces can change technique.
Yeah.
I mean, everything. Yes, everything changed.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yikes. You know what though is interesting though? I mean, we're laughing about it, but it was a time. This is the 80s, early 1980s, where theater school teachers, particularly in the post-secondary world, like colleges, universities, felt perfectly entitled to comment on the superficial, the surface. They absolutely felt entitled. They felt, in fact, it was their duty to let people know, you got to lose weight. Look at, and they used to say, to other guys in my class, you're too effeminate. No. You got to be toughen it up. You got to be more masculine, right? And this would be in front of the rest of the class, right? And it was that that era of tough love. That's what you do in the performing arts. Yeah. You go into these training and they tell you exactly but it was often so surface.
Well, and said, with tremendous confidence, we're going to break you down.
That's right.
We're going to build you up.
That's right. That's right. Which was and breakdown meaning primarily humiliation.
Yeah.
Right. I have a friend who I went to school with, Nia Vardalos, her name is, and she was in school with me. She was the year behind me, and she was she's Greek.
Yeah.
She has dark Greek hair and she was a different shape than a lot of the people in the class. Anyways, they had no problem pointing out over and over again that she was never going to succeed if she didn't do this. She couldn't be, and she faced that so much so that she left. But then she faced it in the professional world, and they told her, there's no real place for you here. And over and over and over again. That wasn't just sort of one bad session. And she tells stories about over and over again being told no, until she finally said, hold my beer.
Yeah. I mean, there's been so much recently, and by recently, I guess in the last 3 or 4 years at least, a lot of discussion about theater training, what theater training was, or how people approach training, and former students who are now talking about, pretty regularly about how they were mistreated and didn't know that there was, it would have taken a lot of guts for somebody to say, get lost, or I'm leaving, because that isn't how that part of the world worked. Right?
Well, and it was, to be fair, it wasn't just happening in theater schools, it was happening in rehearsal halls too. Right. I mean, the 70s and 80s are filled with stories of directors, tyrannical directors, megalomaniacal directors who, because of the nature of theater, immediately have the respect because they're often responsible for you even being in the room. But so then because they're responsible for picking you over one of the other 700,000 actors who need jobs, then they have the right to speak to you whatever way they want. And that was just taken for granted.
Yeah.
And in fact, the more brilliant the director, the more cruel they could be. And you and I both know stories of directors that were just, and that was, I'm still thinking of one of Canada's finest female actors who still raves about a certain British director who was very popular in our world for a while, because he was brilliant. He's brilliant. But he humiliated people. Just humiliated people. And that was part of it, right? Like you said before, well, we've got to break you down, because if we don't break you down, we can't build you back up into something better.
Right. It's it's perverse. I mean, when I was a student and thinking that I was going to be an actor, I just didn't. I certainly was not equipped to know how to deal with that. I just shut down and looked, rather enigmatic. I mean, that was just about protecting myself. And I certainly didn't have the wherewithal to give it back or to that took a long time. And I think, I know that as a result, when I started directing, I think I've always been far more attracted to working with people who I believe will not play that kind of game. And where, we all have egos and everybody can misbehave, but there's a big difference between that and people who need to be, the engine of whatever project they're working on, regardless of who else is in the room or anything like that.
Well, the hierarchy as well, right? It's often the director, because the director had the final word about casting.
Yeah.
I am forever grateful for just to be in the room. Oh, it's such an honor, and I've seen your work, and I know you have a difficult reputation, but like what you get out of these people is, and sometimes that is true.
Mm-hmm.
However, we put up with it for a long, long time. Now, let me just say, I am a 6 foot tall white male with all the privilege that brings with it. So I did not face the level of, negativity and humiliation that a lot of people did. I come from a place of privilege, and I absolutely know that. Because other people's experience was very different.
Well, sure, but I've no doubt that you were witness to a lot of that stuff. I mean, it's that to not be the one on the receiving end is one thing, but to have to observe that and know, especially whether it's in class or in rehearsal with other actors, knowing what that does to people or what that can do to people, and how it's beyond painful. I mean, it's horrible to have to watch anybody.
And this is getting deep, but complicit, right? Yeah. Somehow, I see other actors being yelled at or berated, and I don't say anything. I look down in my script and I look away, or I look for the first moment to leave the rehearsal room because I've got other stuff to do. Right? That I didn't stand up for others.
Right.
By the way, I should probably correct the record. I'm 5'11" and 3/4. I just feel that.
But your resume says 6 feet.
I'm 60 years old, so I'm trying to be honest about stuff like that now. And
okay, so
my resume does say 6 feet. Okay, nice. Thanks for pointing that out, Joel. Yeah,
that's under your special skills, right? So let's go back. I mean, so you were at Ryerson. You went through a 3 or 4 year program at Ryerson, and in what ways did that help you, to prepare for being a professional actor, or in what ways did it and did it not take you beyond the training into the profession?
On the positive side, the opportunity to do shows, do plays, work on scripts, put things together either officially as part of the program, or we were encouraged to do lunchtime shows, work on our own. So I was always busy learning a script, working on a script, working with the groups. That is essential, right? I can't be an actor if I'm lying on my bed watching YouTube videos, waiting for somebody to message me on Facebook to say, are you interested in doing this show? If I'm not participating, I can't learn and I can't grow. So from that level, it was really beneficial. Also, they seem to like me. So again, I speak from a position of privilege. I was pointed out early on as somebody who was worthy of paying attention to. So the faculty, for the most part, supported me and praised me. Okay. Right? That was not the case so I left going, well, that was kind of fun. I have other students who were like, that was the worst 3 years of my life. Yeah. However, let me tell you a quick story about what didn't happen. You're talking about professional ways and stuff. About 3 years, 3 years after I graduated, in 1989, I graduated in 86. I was doing my first show with Young People's Theater. Susan Wright was directing, who was an actor that I greatly admired. She was doing one of her first directing jobs, and somebody who's now still a good friend of mine, Karen Bernstein, was the other actor in it, and we were doing a show about children of alcoholics. what it was like living in there. So anyways, we started rehearsal. And of course I was a bit in awe because I was a huge fan of Susan Wright. And she was personable and body and fun. And so we started rehearsal. Karen had quite a bit of experience doing shows. She had probably working professionally for about 4 years at that point. So we started blocking the show, and we're doing the script, and it's a Dennis Foon script, and it's fine. So we do 2-3 days of rehearsal, and Karen and I walk out of rehearsal together one night, and she says, Jeff, I enjoy you, but I have to just point something out. I went, what? You keep upstaging me. And I was like, what's that? Do you mean I'm like louder than you, or like more like crazy in my actions? No, you stand upstage of me all the time. When we start a scene or in the middle of a scene, you'll go upstage. So I have to turn. I'm sorry, you're going to have to explain what that is. So Karen had to take 15 minutes there at the corner of where the Simpson United Church was, and explain to me what it meant when you stand upstage of an actor. First, she had to point out which was upstage. So anyways, my point is, 3 years after graduating summa cum laude from Ryerson Theater School, I had to have another actor explain to me what it was, what upstaging was, and why it wasn't a good thing. So on the one hand, yes, it was fantastic to work on scripts and productions. And of course there was money. So there was production values for some of the graduating things, and it was lovely. But on the other hand, there was some really essential basic stuff that I didn't learn. So I'm not convinced that, I am convinced that a person with curiosity, talent, a certain amount of talent and a certain amount of drive can sort of apprentice within companies or start to do smaller roles in companies and fringe shows, work on their own fringe scripts, and find a really worthwhile and satisfying career and respected career without going into any kind of formal training.
Okay. Now, and you're teaching now. In addition to, you.
Yeah, no, did I say theater training? You don't need it? No, you absolutely need it.
No. But I'm curious. So the experience that you remember from having been a student, and then many years later, doing teaching with the same with students who have presumably the same hope or plan or focus. Are you conscious of doing anything that is either borrowed from or different from what you remember from your own student experience?
I'm going to sort of question one of your statements, and that is the same type of student that was going into theater school in the 70s or 80s is the same that we're seeing. I certainly think in some cases it is, but the nature of entertainment, the nature of our leisure time, what we do in our leisure time is very different. So we're getting young people now who are very much, many of whom have never seen a play.
Right.
Many of whom have never read a play, certainly, or been to the theater, right? They have seen lots of stuff on social media. They've seen lots of clips on YouTube or Insta or TikTok, and they're intrigued by performing that way. But it's not necessarily. I went to theater school because I was sort of getting this reinforcement in high school, but it's also because I was a reader.
Right.
I actually was really turned on by stories.
Yeah.
And at a very early age, I asked my mom and dad to get me a subscription to the O'Keefe Center and to Royal Alex. And I would go and see these shows, these like horrible bus and truck things from the fourth Broadway tour of Karen Valentine and Anthony Perkins in a romantic comedy. And they were so tired. But I'd be like, this is incredible. They're in love, but they're not really in love. But he doesn't know that she's like, we're not getting as much of that in that the nature of people watch Netflix,
right.
and that seems intriguing. I'm generalizing.
No,
I'm generalizing,
it's a
but
really
it's
good
not
point.
necessarily the same sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like where young people are being taken at a very early age to the theater on a regular basis,
right.
and that live theater experience is something that really turns them on. Right.
Yeah.
The nature of entertainment.
Yeah.
is very different.
Yeah.
However, how do I take how I was taught and what we were just talking about? I have no place in the classroom pronouncing judgment. Or because you know what, Joel? I mean, I'm not even being disingenuous going, oh, I don't really know anything. I mean, edit this part out. But I mean, I don't really know much. Like I have a lot of experience and stuff, but I mean, professionally, I still am in rehearsal going, wow, how do you do this? Like, so the whole idea that I can stand in front of a whole bunch of students and say, no, you don't have it. You've got maybe it. Listen, if you lose 20 pounds, you think, listen, your voice is too femmy. You've got to butch it up. Like all that stuff.
Yeah.
Shut the F up. You don't, no. What I do is I create, hopefully, I create a classroom or a studio experience of discovery and fun and excitement and enthusiasm. I teach, like in first year, I teach a Canadian play reading course. And what I do is simply we read the plays and we try to build connections. Like, we read Kim's Convenience. Does anyone ever have a family experience that's similar to Kim's Convenience? Like, oh wow, I had a father that sort of was the same type as Appa, and he was always telling me to. So we sort of build connections to the material. Yeah. I don't sit around going, like, I don't like the way you read it. You're not going to be a professional if you continue to read like that. No. I mean, I always go back to the Nearvet Ellis example of these teachers telling her over and over again she was never going to make it. They don't have a clue. I mean, it's so mired in our own failed, like our own inability to reach the heights that we wanted to reach, that we're going to take it out on young people. I'm sorry. No. And I know you and I feel about, we certainly can look at students and, but no, honestly, Joel, I do not feel it is my place to say, here, come in. I've got to talk to you.
Yeah.
You're never going to make it, kid. This is not the place for you. You know what? Let them come to that determination on their own, right? Yeah. And you know what? If they don't, they spent 3 years in our program with experiences and memories and connections with people that they will never forget. Yeah. And that will serve them as the vice president of the Rand Corporation or the shift supervisor at their local Starbucks.
Yep. Yeah.
It will.
Right.
It is. I am no longer in the business. Yeah. No. I have never been in the business of training the young professionals of the new theater. Yeah. Just Jeff, why don't you train yourself? Why don't you work on your own issues? But you don't stand in front of a group of people saying, I know,
Yeah, no, I was at a theater training program for 5 years, quite a number of years ago. And I left that and taught for quite a number of years in a liberal arts setting that had theater and a lot of activity. And I said, oh, this is certainly where I belong, because I remember so clearly looking at, the classes we had in what was called a conservatory, just saying, I don't know why most of these students are here. I said, I can't, many of the students would complain about having to, the guys would complain because they had to wear a dance belt for movement. And that was the deal breaker. I said, I think I just want an agent so I can do commercials. I said, well, then that's, then go ahead. I mean, that's what you should be doing. And I just found that whole world uncomfortable in the way I think that you're talking about. you have no idea who people are when you're watching them, and they're young. In the school that I taught in, they were too young, and who knows what, if you could look ahead 5 years or 10 years, you can't do that. You have no idea. And I've no doubt that I suffered from some of the same stuff when I was when I was their age, when I was a student, praying that one of my teachers would tell me, that you're the best, and you got it, whatever that is supposed to mean. So let's move away from teaching. I think we should definitely move away from teaching, and moving into the profession. And this doesn't have to be chronological, but how you start and where you begin, and what happens to you, I guess, emotionally and discipline wise. Did you get work soon after graduating?
Yes, I did. However, it was, yes, I did. I within, I think, 6 to 8 months of leaving theater school, I got a job with a company called the Actors Trunk Company, which was a children's theater company that was actually based in Detroit, but I can't remember how it worked. But anyway, they cast in Toronto, and then we would tour sort of Southern Ontario and do, the van, loading the set in the van and stuff. And of course, I know those memories of that are very, very strong in my mind, because it was the first professional. Mm-hmm. And it was, I think, about 6 months after I finished school. So being 23, 24 years old, and like, okay, well, this is it. I mean, that's the thing, right? You start that, you get that first job, and you're working. So you're going to rehearsal every day, and then you're getting on the road, and you're like, well, this is my life. Yeah. This is it. Yeah. Right. I mean, I spent the first 15, 20 years of my career, every time I would be in a play or a show or do something professionally, I'd be like, well, here I go. This is it. Right. It's like the shortest. But so it was very, very exciting. Yeah. And being young and having that ego, which hasn't been tested, mm-hmm. or, and a sense of entitlement, that, yep, I just got hired, and of course I'm going to continue to be hired because I'm Jeff Miller, and the world will see soon that mm-hmm. There is no other actor. And so that was great. And then that was about 4 months. That tour was long. And then I didn't work for a year and a half.
And what's that like?
It is, it's the exact opposite of working. I mean, the problem is, as you go through as a professional actor, and you have these times of not working and working, learning to fill your life when you're not working with stuff that supports you and keeps you your soul fed and all mm-hmm. that stuff. But certainly early on, it was depressing. Yeah, it was absolutely depressing because the ego has not been properly shaped. So when I'm working, I'm the king of the world, and I deserve to be king of the world. And then when I'm not working, I am worthless, useless, ashamed, afraid, upset, so on and so forth. So it's.
How did you learn, or how does one learn to deal with the downtime and to avoid doing yourself in?
Yeah, I think I'm still working on that, Joel. Yep. I'm still working on that. Okay. To be honest, this summer I haven't worked. Mm-hmm. I go back to teaching in a couple of weeks, but I have usually booked like 1 or 2 days on a film or a commercial or something, and this summer has been nothing. Yeah. And I still have like moments of like, I still am learning every day to hold on, you've got all these other obligations in life and these interesting things going on in your life and stuff, but you still, it's still I'm still learning.
Yeah.
You know, reading, seeing theater, seeing film, having the time to see film, having the time to spend time with family and friends, right? But the problem is I feel better with family and spending time with family and friends when I'm working. right? Because as an actor, you get so tired of people. And you know what? Let me tell you a little inside secret. Nobody ever asks you what you're working on when you're working on something. Let me just say that right off the bat. Yeah. Nobody ever says to you when you're, last season, I did 2 shows. I did one in Sudbury, really fantastic experience. It's like a challenging script, a great part. Came back, had 6 weeks off, and I did another challenging new script at YPT, right? That whole time, nobody ever said, "Oh, are you busy now? Are you doing anything?" Not one person. The moment that show closed at YPT, I literally stepped out of the building. A stranger came up to me and he said, "So are you working on anything now?" And I was like, no, nothing. I'm unemployed.
Right.
And the next 16 strangers I saw on the way to the streetcar were like, "Hey, working on anything? Working on anything? Hey, you working on anything?" No, F off. No. So it's constant. It's constant. I mean, the nice thing about being a little older and things, you're sort of used to it. So it doesn't necessarily knock you to the ground the way it used to, but, I mean, I wish I probably should at the age I'm in and the number of years I've been doing it, I should probably have some kind of PowerPoint presentation that I can show you about how I fill my life and my soul with joy and purpose when I'm not working as an actor. Mm-hmm. But I have struggled with that PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that, well, I understand what you're saying, and I'm sure that most of us do, because you are, and perhaps with any profession, but this one is the one that I know. So it feels as though, are you cliche? Are you an actor when you're not acting? Are you a writer when you're not writing? Or if you're writing and you're not getting published or produced, what does that mean, right? Throughout your career, because it's been you've been doing this for a long time, are there any moments, or I guess, are there any people who were instrumental in inspiring or mentoring or pointing you in directions that, whether you knew it or not at the time, whether you know it now by reflection, who were really helpful in ways that are fundamental to what your work is?
Let me think. You?
Oh, thank you.
I have.
And that wasn't a cue.
Sure it was. We talked about it 10 minutes before we started recording. No, I have said this to you offline at a coffee a year ago or 2 years ago or something, but you changed my life. And I have no problem saying that. It's not hyperbole. Yeah. You changed my life. You're one of maybe 3 professionals in the industry who for whatever reason, were kind enough to invest in me. And I certainly don't mean, financially necessarily, but I mean with energy and support and confidence. Mm-hmm. And so in 1990, I had done a show. I'd done the Susan Wright show, and they called me in for an audition for a show called Reading the Signs, which was a cross-Canada tour for the International Year's Literacy, which was a I think 4 or 5 performers. Anyways, it was already going, but because it'd been going for so long, they had a couple of performers who were leaving the tour and they needed replacements. So I went in and auditioned in the big theater there. And, this kind of harks back to what we were talking about with the high school affirmation that I received. So I was very nervous because I hadn't done musicals really a lot before, and I had not met you before. and you were the director. And you were there, and we were alone in the big main space at YPT on Front Street. And I went up and did my song, and I went up and did my monologue, and you said to come down and come and chat with me. So I sat sort of a couple of theater seats away from you, but you sort of casually had your notebook left open, like there. And so I was pretending to pay attention to what you were talking about, but really I was looking down to see what the notes were. Now, I happened to look down, and you had written Jeff Miller at the top and sort of underlined it a number of times, which is fine. And underneath it, you wrote, very good. And I remember being filled with something like, somebody thinks I'm very good? Hold on. You watch what I just did there and wrote down very good? That's what? So even 4 years after theater school, it's still, I'm that kid, that 15-year-old kid in that theater class with somebody saying, I'm going to give you a perfect score for that, right? Mm-hmm. You certainly weren't giving a perfect score with what I did, but but that kind of affirmation, I went, wow, right? And it was meaningful, so much meaningful that I'm retelling that story 100 years later. But then you cast me in that, and then you continued to give me opportunities over 30 years. Yeah. And the opportunities have been different and have been challenging, and probably most exciting of all have been with other company members, designers, actors, director that were really good at what they do. And that is what I treasure, is the fact that you gave me those opportunities to contribute what I could contribute, but to take in what really good people do. and that has been the thing I've been most grateful for. I am grateful to you forever because you changed my life, Joel Greenberg.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. And I know we've had a long professional relationship that's become a friendship, and that certainly doesn't always happen. And I value that too. And I think that's probably a pretty good place for us to come to a... Are
we taking a break and coming back for another hour?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. But I thank you, Jeff. This has been really lovely, and it's always fun to listen to you talk. And for all of you who are listening to this, please tell your friends, tell everybody you meet, tell the people on your way to the streetcar about Life in Stages, where they can find it, how they can follow, and maybe even rate it. I'm told that's something that I should be asking everybody to do. 5 stars, 5 stars. In addition, in order to keep the podcast alive and thriving, as you know, there is no charge for this podcast, but donations are very much appreciated. And if you are inclined to make a donation, you go to patreon.com, patreon.com/lifeinstages, and the directions will be there for you to make a donation as you see fit. Thank you all, and I look forward to having our next guest in. And Jeff, thanks again.
Thanks, Joel.